Hello everyone, dear friends, today's review will be devoted to a new product from Xiaomi. And we will talk about the most affordable router with Wi-Fi 7 support, Xiaomi BE3600. Thanks to the Adaptive WAN-port with a throughput of 2.5 gigabits per second, the theoretical maximum throughput of the wireless network is up to 3.57 gigabits per second in combination with the 5G frequency range 2 by 2160 MHz. One device can simultaneously connect to the 2.4G and 5G frequency bands, respectively. Two channels transmit data in parallel, which increases the overall speed of the gadgets. It also supports mesh networks, which allows two or more routers to quickly create a mesh network with huge coverage. In this video I will try to maximize the full potential of this router. Let's look at its connectivity capabilities, check its speed and range. Let's also see how and what it is assembled from. Let's check the settings and capabilities in MiHome and the settings in the browser. It comes in a cardboard box like this. On the front is a picture of the router. On the top is the model name. Wi-Fi 7 support is modestly placed in the lower left corner. On the back are the main characteristics. But since the version is for the Chinese market, all the inscriptions are in Chinese. Let's put the router aside and look at the package. We will not need the instructions, they are in Chinese, but if you wish, you can read them using Google Translator. A separate compartment contains the connection cable and the router's power supply. The Ethernet cable is of very high quality, it feels like it is covered in silicone. They didn't skimp on the length either, 1 meter. The power supply has a Chinese plug, make sure to buy an adapter. Produces 12 volts and a current of 1.5 amperes. The plug is quite thin and long. There is nothing else but the router. Let's go directly to the router. It was very unusual for me to see non-folding antennas. That is, the router will not, as we are used to, lie with its antennas straightened. And it should sort of stand vertically. I can't say that I liked this decision. On the one hand, it will take up less space on the bedside table or table. But on the other hand, this arrangement of the router is very unusual. On the front there is a small Xiaomi inscription and under it an LED indicator of the current status of the router. Wi-Fi 7 is engraved on the right antenna. There are small holes between the antennas for better heat transfer. The thickness of the router is small in the upper part 20 mm, in the lower part 33 mm. The height is 220 mm, width 207 mm. The design turned out to be quite interesting. The front part and antennas are almost perpendicular to the table. But you won't be able to move the router close to the wall or mount it on the wall, since the connected Ethernet wires will get in the way. The back is fully perforated for cooling. On the left there is a power connection port. Behind it there is a hidden button to reset the device and then 4 LAN/WAN ports. Yes, the ports are not marked where is the LAN and where is the WAN connection. This tells us that the Ethernet ports are adaptive, and where the cable from the provider is connected, that port will be the WAN. Marking is only by port number. Ports 1, 2, and 3 have a connection speed of 1 gigabit per second. And the last, fourth port is marked 2.5G, which means by connecting a cable to it we can get a speed of 2.5 gigabits per second from the provider, or by connecting home equipment that supports a similar connection speed. The last button is for connecting the router to the mesh network. I already showed in the previous video how easy this is to do on Xiaomi routers. Literally one click of a button and the router will be added to the mesh network. At the bottom is a sticker with the name and MAC address of the device. The name of the Wi-Fi network to which you need to connect for the initial setup of the router is also located. There are holes on the sides for ventilation. Small plastic legs are also present. Model, Xiaomi router BE3600. Wi-Fi standard, Wi-Fi 7. Modulation, 4096 QAM. MRU/MLO. Processor, quad-core Qualcomm 1.1 GHz. IoT support. Wireless network throughput, up to 3600 megabits per second. 2.5 gigabit Ethernet port. Memory, RAM 256 megabytes, flash 128 megabytes. 2.4G Wi-Fi 2x2, theoretical maximum speed up to 688 megabits per second. 5G Wi-Fi 2x2 160 megahertz, theoretical maximum speed up to 2882 megabits per second. Product antenna for high-gain Wi-Fi antennas. Cooling, natural heat dissipation. Network ports. 1 adaptive WAN/LAN port 10 divided by 100 divided by 1000 divided by 2500 m. 3 adaptive WAN/LAN ports 10 divided by 100 divided by 1000 m. Let's see what's inside this router. To do this, you need to peel off the sticker a little and unscrew the only screw. Now we need to divide the body into 2 parts. It took me a lot of effort to separate it, since everything is on latches. There are 4 antennas at the top. 2 for 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi, and 2 more for 5 GHz Wi-Fi. Let's go from left to right. On the left we have a Qualcomm QCN6402 chip. It is responsible for our 2.4 GHz Wi-Fi. Next up is the Motorcom YT8821 chip, a highly integrated transceiver chip designed for wired Ethernet connections. Supports multiple Ethernet speeds, 10 base T, 100 base TX, 1000 base T, and 2.5 base T. In the center is the Motorcom YT9215S chip, which is a switch chip designed for creating multiport network devices. Supports up to 2 uplink 2.5 gigabits per second per 1 gigabit per second SerDes or 2 uplink RGMII/MII/RMII interfaces, or a combination thereof. Provides configuration flexibility for a variety of network applications. Equipped with a high-performance RISC-V CPU core to manage switching and network traffic. Supports basic network management functions such as STP, Spanning Tree Protocol, is a loop prevention protocol. IGMP, Internet Group Management Protocol, is a multicast management protocol. VLAN, Virtual Local Area Network, Virtual Local Networks. 802.1x, Network Authentication, allows you to configure access control rules, ACLs, to filter network traffic. Supports quality of service, QoS, features for traffic prioritization. Next is the GigaDevice GDP1BFLM chip. This is a DDR3 LSDRAM type random access memory, RAM, chip designed for embedded systems. Volume 256 megabytes, frequency or 1866 megabits per second or 2133 megabits per second. The Qualcomm IPQ5312 chip is responsible for 5 GHz Wi-Fi. It is a system-on-chip, SoC, from Qualcomm used in some routers and networking devices. IPQ5312 provides high performance and functionality for wireless networks. It integrates a processor, network accelerator, Wi-Fi and other components, making it an excellent choice for building reliable and powerful routers. On the other side of the board there is a massive iron radiator, which not only gives stability to the router but also serves as a radiator for the chips. Thermal pads are present and I don't want to tear them off. Setting up this router, even if it is intended for the Chinese market and all settings are in Chinese, is not difficult. Let's try to figure this out. After turning on for the first time, we just need to connect the cable from our provider. After this we have two options, configure via smartphone or laptop. Let's start with using a smartphone. First, we connect to an open Wi-Fi network called RD15 4 characters, after which we open a notification from our router in a pop-up window. We agree with all the proposed points and press the blue button. If we need separate Wi-Fi networks for 5 GHz and 2.4 GHz, we can switch to the desired frequency. Then we can change the name of our Wi-Fi network and enter the password. In most cases, the router will configure itself and connect to the provider automatically. Now we just need to find the changed Wi-Fi network in the list and enter the previously set password. Now we have access to the internet. We can also control the router through a mobile application. Just install and open MiHome. After entering the administrator password, which is the same as the Wi-Fi password, you can select a virtual room and rename the router as desired. Inside the application, information about the network connection and data transfer speed is displayed in real time. We also see the router's support for Wi-Fi 7 and mesh networks, to which there is a separate button for adding devices. The list of connected devices provides detailed information, including the amount of traffic consumed, time connected to the router, current download and upload speeds, and signal strength. You can set a speed limit for each device and configure its type and brand. The name and password of the Wi-Fi network are available on the main screen, as well as the ability to create a QR code to connect other devices. In the Wi-Fi settings, you can control the separation between 2.4 and 5 GHz, change the network name or password. There are also advanced Wi-Fi settings where you can turn MU-MIMO on or off, set up Wi-Fi 5 compatibility, and turn off quick device connection. The 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi settings are almost identical. In the 5 GHz bandwidth settings we see the presence of 160 MHz. In the network connection settings, you can select the type of your connection to the internet provider, including access point or repeater mode. In WAN-port mode, you can force the port to be switched, which is convenient if you use two internet providers. Network information shows the IP address received by the router from the provider. Network management options are also available in the router settings. You can set the router reboot time as daily, automatic, or one time. Although, to be honest, it is not very clear why this function is needed. Xiaomi devices work quite stably. It is recommended to change the administrator password and make it different from the Wi-Fi network password. After this, you can immediately reboot the router. Updates are installed in one click using the built-in assistant. Despite the fact that the router is relatively new, at the time of this review the firmware was 1.0.39. It is also possible to reset the router to factory settings and control the router LED, including turning it off or setting on and off times. IPTV is turned off by default, but if you use this service, it should be turned on. In the port aggregation menu, you can enable this feature and select 2 ports for aggregation to increase the connection speed to 2 gigabits. Next, the QoS, quality of service, function is available, which allows you to set priorities for various types of traffic, as well as limit the speed for the guest network. You can check the Wi-Fi quality and optimize it if necessary, for example, change the channel to avoid conflict with other routers. Among the additional functions, you can set a timer to turn Wi-Fi on, off, create a guest Wi-Fi network indicating the name, password and period of its operation, and also enable family internet access protection. For advanced users, it is possible to change hosts, binding an IP address to a domain name, and configure anti-hacking. Some devices support WPS connection, which can be enabled if necessary. There's also family internet protection, which lets you choose which device to protect against inappropriate content. In the main settings, you can rename the device, change its location, and view information about it. Let's look at the possibilities of managing the router via a web browser. When connecting to Wi-Fi, Windows notified that our Wi-Fi is the newest and fastest, Wi-Fi 6. By default, the device's IP address is in 31 subnets. We enter 192.168.31.1 and get into the administrative panel of our router. The login is admin, and the default password is the one you use to set up the Wi-Fi network. However, it can be changed, but more on that later. The interface opens in Chinese, but this is not a problem since I use the Chrome browser, and to translate it, just click the right mouse button and select the translation into the desired language. In the main window we see the status of the router, the name and passwords of the Wi-Fi network, as well as the number of connected clients. By clicking on the button with connected devices, we see a list of these devices and can easily disconnect them from the internet, while maintaining access to the local network. By clicking on the Earth icon, we get information about the internet connection and can set download and upload speed limits. By going to the main settings, we can divide the 2.4 and 5 GHz Wi-Fi networks into separate subnets, select the transmission channel, its width and power for each band. You can turn the MLO function on or off. MLO in Xiaomi routers such as Xiaomi BE3600 and Xiaomi 10G stands for multi-link operation. This is a feature that allows Wi-Fi 7 devices to connect to multiple frequency bands simultaneously using a single IP address to increase overall throughput and connection speed. If you have older devices that are not compatible with Wi-Fi 6, you can enable backwards compatibility mode with Wi-Fi 5. There is also a useful option, TWT energy saving mode, which allows smartphones connected via Wi-Fi 6 to access the router less often to save battery power. It is recommended to leave the MLO and connect happily options enabled. In the Internet Connection Settings section, you can change the connection type from DHCP to PPPoE, select a static IP address, and also set your DNS servers and change the MAC address of the router. Some providers hardwire the router by MAC address, and the new router will not connect without calling the operator. We can also switch the operating mode to wired or wireless Wi-Fi repeater mode and control the WAN port. You can also control the inclusion and operation of the IPv6 protocol. I recommend turning it off altogether. You can also enable the IPv6 firewall. It is disabled by default. The WAN port is the port into which the cable from your provider is connected. You can leave it to the router's choice, or you can set a static port. In the security settings, we can restrict access to the administrative part of the router only via a cable connection. After the first connection, I strongly recommend changing the administrator password so that it is different from the password of your Wi-Fi network. Here you can also specify white access lists to the administrative part of the router. In the LAN network settings, we have the opportunity to change the subnet and set the starting and ending pool of local IP addresses. We can also establish a rigid binding between the received IP address and the MAC address of the connected device. Let's move on to the system settings of the router. Here we can turn the LED on the front panel on or off, check the firmware status and update it as needed. We can get the log of the router, reboot or create a backup of the settings. We can also restore the router settings from a previous backup. This section also allows you to install plugins, select time and time zone. Let's move on to the advanced settings of the router. First we get to the QoS configuration menu. This is a technology that gives different classes of traffic different processing priorities. You can also set speed limits here if that's important to you. For home use, this setting may not be so important, but we can set the maximum download and upload speeds for each device, as well as set speed limits for the guest Wi-Fi network. In the DDNS settings section we can select one of 4 providers of this service and, if necessary, enable this function. In the port forwarding settings section, we can change or create router port forwarding rules. Enabling the DMZ feature can map the IP address of a device inside the network to the outside network, making it easier to access the device from the outside network. If you use a VPN connection service, then in this section you can configure a connection to the providers of this service. If you have more than 2 internet connection providers, I highly recommend setting up the dual WAN port feature. When you enable this feature, WAN port aggregation is enabled by default, which allows you to get speeds of up to 2 gigabits per second by combining the speed of 2 providers. We can also select the main provider for the first WAN port and the backup one for the second, or vice versa. This is a very important feature for a router that costs around $40 and allows you to connect to a backup ISP or combine the speed of 2 providers. Xiaomi continues to amaze. Previous models of routers from Xiaomi often had problems with IPTV, and often it did not work without flashing the router to third-party firmware. Now this can be done simply in the settings. We can also enable aggregation for LAN ports, which in theory will increase the connection speed to 3.5 gigabits per second, which can be useful for connecting home file storage. If you play games often and are connected to your router via a cable connection, you can select the port for gaming mode. Traffic will be transmitted over it with higher priority than traffic from other ports, which will help reduce ping in games and possibly increase speed. The router can be a member of the mesh network, both wired and wireless. I showed how to connect this network quickly and easily in a previous video. As you can see, the function is placed in a separate menu. In the router management menu we can rename it, update the firmware or download the MIA app for management. You can reboot or exit the setup session. Let's take some speed measurements. According to my tariff plan, the speed should not exceed 700 megabits per second. There's no point in checking your wired connection, but Wi-Fi is a different matter. We check and see that the speed is slightly lower, 650 megabits per second for downloading and 670 megabits per second for uploading. We have 2 computers. On one of them we will launch the APERF server, and on the second we will measure the speed. All this will happen on the same local network, so we will be able to find out exactly the speed of direct connection and data transfer. First, let's check the wired connection. The server and the computer under test are connected to the router via an Ethernet cable. We run the connection command and test the download speed. The speed is 924 megabits per second for both download and upload. Let's do the reverse test using the R key, and the speed is 844 megabits per second. This is a single stream option. Now we'll do a test with 5 streams, where the average speed of each stream will be 190 megabits per second and the total speed will be 945 megabits per second for both download and upload. We will do the same for the reverse test using the R key, where the total speed will be 851 megabits per second for both download and upload. Now we disconnect the cable from our client. The server will remain connected to the router via an Ethernet cable, and we will conduct speed tests via Wi-Fi. We run the connection command and test the download speed. We see that the speed is 406 megabits per second for both download and upload. Let's do the reverse test using the R key, and the speed will be 410 megabits per second. This is a single stream option. Now we'll do a test with 5 streams, where the average speed of each stream will be 175 megabits per second and the total speed will be 866 megabits per second for both download and upload. We will do the same for the reverse test using the R key, where the total speed will be 930 megabits per second for both download and upload. Speed readings are practically no different from wired internet speeds. 900 megabits per second over Wi-Fi is truly amazing for a budget router. I'll tell you a little secret why you should buy a Xiaomi router for the Chinese market. The secret is that there are no restrictions on transmitter power, as in Europe. There are also no strong restrictions on channels of use, which allows you to choose a channel that will be inaccessible to European routers and thereby reduce interference from neighboring routers. We will perform a range test with a new product, which turned out to be very long range and replaced all my other routers, namely Xiaomi AX3000T. I installed the routers at the same distance and will measure the signal moving away from them. Within the first floor the signal strength is like this. Now I'm in the next room. So I crossed one room, there are two walls between me and the routers. Now I have gone down to the first floor and am in the farthest room, between us there are two walls and a ceiling. I went out into the street and will take measurements moving away from the house. There will be one wall of the house between us. This is what the signal information looks like 15 meters from the house. I move a little further than 25 meters. At 35 meters the signal strength is this. 55 meters. The maximum distance was 65 meters. As you can see, the AX3000T is almost on par with the BE3600. But in the final meters, the BE3600 has a stronger signal in both the 2.4 GHz. Unfortunately, I was not able to fully test Wi-Fi 7. I don't have such a module yet, but I was very interested in it and I ordered it. I leave the link in the description under the video. In terms of price/quality ratio, I can call this router very good among its competitors, if we take into account the presence of a 2.5 gigabit data transmission channel, port aggregation capabilities and the latest Wi-Fi 7, then it has no competitors in its price range. I don't think that in the near future they will be. This device fully complies with the stated characteristics. Setup and management are very simple, especially through the mobile application. It provides the ability to connect two providers, create mesh networks, and all this for a price of about $40. The advantage is also that when using Wi-Fi you can get an almost gigabit channel. The only negative can be attributed to the characteristics of the antennas. Only 2x2, 4x2 would be better. However, despite this, the range of the router deserves special mention. It is above all praise. I hope the video was useful to you and was able to reveal all the capabilities of this router. Please don't forget to like the video if you liked it and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss other interesting videos about smart and not so smart home systems. You will find all links to products in the description under the video. There is also a link to a Telegram group where you will find not only new products on the smart home system but also interesting smart home products, discounts, coupons, and promotions. There is also a link to a Telegram group structured by forum topics for communication and resolving issues related to a smart home. All the best to everyone, peaceful skies and goodness. Bye bye.